Hi, I am Dr. Helena, and I am a self-worth coach, and I empower women to show up in their lives, personal and professional, with confidence, passion, authenticity, and joy. I do this in 4 ways. The first one is I teach women how to develop a loving and kind relationship with themselves, because this is the basis of self-worth. Secondly, I teach them the capabilities to manage their mind, emotions, and nervous system, because this is their biggest block to success. Thirdly, I foster healing of their disempowered stories of overwhelm, powerlessness, shame, lack, and isolation, so that they can show up with confidence, passion, authenticity, and joy. And the fourth way is I help them clear the unconscious blocks to creating wealth in their lives, so that they can create the life that they deserve. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the capabilities that we need to manage our mind, emotion, and nervous system. And this capability is called self-mastery. Now, what is self-mastery? So self-mastery, as I mentioned above, is the ability to manage your nervous system, your mind, your emotions. And to do that, there are layers that you need to know and move through in order to manage your nervous system, to manage your mind, and to manage your emotions. Okay? So you've all heard of the term doing your inner work, right? Or sitting with your feelings. How many of you really know what that means? When I was a psychotherapist, I would tell people to sit in their feelings. And a client recently reminded me, saying that she can still hear my voice in her head telling her to sit with her feelings. Today I want to show you what that really means. I want to show you what doing your inner work looks like. Okay? So when something happens in our lives, expected or unexpected, some of us go into this fix-it mode. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to deal with the external circumstance. But some people stay in this fix-it mode, and that can be so exhausting. So what do? We also need to go inward and deal with the impact of and investigate how that circumstance is affecting us internally. Because if we don't go inward, we can get stuck or blocked. So from an EFT tapping perspective, energy is supposed to flow up and down our system. And when something happens in our lives and we don't do that internal check or processing, the energy flow is disrupted. Gary Craig, the developer of EFT, says, a disruption in the energy flow is the cause of all of our negative emotions and pain. So how do we do that internal check? Or how do we process what's happening? Now, in order to do that, I'm going to talk about the layers that you need to move through in order to do your inner work. So layer number 1 is the physiological fight, flight, freeze response, or what I like to call the triple F. While some of you may be conscious of your stress and anxiety, most of us don't really fully grasp how degrading stress is to our mental focus, clarity, and productivity, let alone our health. When we're under stress, it's very easy to avoid, to freeze, or to overfunction or overcompensate. So what do? We need to learn how to calm down the body, turn off our stress response. Okay? So we are constantly taking in information, and all that information passes through a part of our brain called the amygdala. Think of this part of your brain as an alarm center or as an emergency center. We are constantly filtering the information that we take in to assess for danger or safety. Now, once the brain has made that assessment, the information is then passed down into the body via the autonomic nervous system, which is, think of it as a highway that connects the brain and the body. That is why we call it the mind-body connection. Now, the brain will decide how to respond to what is happening in the following ways: either fight, flee, freeze, or inaction, or surrender. Now, you're usually not conscious of those decisions. It happens automatically, so you have no control over it. Now, the brain is also predictive. What this means is it will unconsciously respond to the situation based on how you responded to it in the past. Now, since we are asking a lot of ourselves as we deal with everything that's going on in our lives, we need to take the time to soothe and calm the body or switch off our stress response. Otherwise, your body is going to stay on guard. Now, the longer your body's on guard, the more exhausted and fearful you become. Now, unfortunately, most of us live in a society that glorifies productivity. Let's soldier on. And one of the most common questions people normally ask is, what do you do? Right? So I grew up in a rural part of Uganda, and as a kid, I remember we would rest after lunch from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And it was too hot anyway, so you can't really do much at those times. And we would be in bed by 9 p.m. Now, the rhythm was slower. And that is why, as an adult, rest is such an important part of my life. Now, staying in your stress response is very taxing to the body. It impacts your immune system, your fertility, your hormones, your adrenal glands, your digestion system, and it also affects the quality of your sleep. Now, one of the quickest ways to turn down your stress response is through EFT tapping, because tapping targets the amygdala, letting your body know that you're safe. Your brain doesn't turn off the stress response unless it knows you're safe. Now, some of us have stayed in that stress response for so long that it's going to take a while for your body to learn how to just calm down. Okay? Now, when you calm down, the rest of your system goes back to normal. And then you have the chance to integrate, process what's really going on. All right? So layer number 2 that you need to be aware of is called the scary, mean self-talk, or your inner critic. Now, your inner critic is the repetitive inner dialogue and that constant worrying that coincides with your stress response. The two are connected. Now, our mind loves to tell us stories because stories give meaning to what is happening to us. We are constantly meaning making. And one of the questions coaches normally ask is, what are you making this mean for you? Or what are you telling yourself about the situation? Remember what I told you about the information that we are constantly taking in? Well, we are constantly interpreting what is happening. what has happened to us, and we make predictions about what's going to happen in the future. So one of the things that my mind, or one of the stories that my mind likes to tell me is, I'm not good with technology. A couple weeks ago, I was supposed to do a master class. And because my mind had already told me that I'm not very good with technology, it was very stressful for me to figure out live streaming from Zoom, all the nitty-gritty technological things that you need to do. Well, if your mind is telling you you're not good at it, that's going to stress you out. And that's what I experienced. I was so stressed out about doing that. Now, pay attention to the story you're telling yourself about what's happening. If you're being overly critical, mean, and saying scary things to yourself, chances are your body is still in the stress response cycle. How do you know? Well, when you look back at what's happened and you're saying things to yourself like, I should have done better, I should have known better, I should have been smarter, I should have been better. Every time you hear the I should have language, when you reflect on something that's happening or something that's happened, that is your inner critic. The I should have language is very disempowering. Just say that with me. I should have. How does that feel in your body? It also feels disempowering in the body. Another way you can know your inner critic is when you look to the future and you're saying things like, what if I fail? What if I'm criticized? What if I'm judged? Maybe I'm a fraud. Does that sound familiar? So this is really fear from your nervous system that's really trapped in your mind. Again, it's very disempowering to the body. It's very disempowering to you. So the longer you stay in your stress response, the more fearful you become. I mentioned that earlier. Now, again, your inner critic fuels your fight, flight, freeze response. Again, because of the mind-body connection. So did you know that when we think thoughts such as, I'm an idiot, I'm not good enough, we have a physiological reaction to it, and that produces feelings in our bodies. So everything that our inner critic says produces feelings in our bodies, and then those feelings confirm that the thing we're thinking about has to be true because I'm feeling it in my body. So there's this vicious cycle that happens. And it's really hard for you to venture out to do something or follow through on a plan when your inner critic is telling you you can't do it, when you have self-doubt, when you're afraid. So how do we break this cycle? We do that by calming our physiology using tapping, so that when we think, I'm an idiot, or I'm not good enough, when you calm your body enough while thinking those thoughts through tapping, your body doesn't get triggered anymore. And then in that moment, you are at choice. You get to decide how you want to change the story that you're telling yourself. So now again, remember, layer number 1 was your physiological fight, flight, freeze response. Layer number 2 is your inner critic. So layer number 3 is called the I don't want to feel this. This is the sudden, I don't want to feel this reaction that you have when you're trying to actively avoid, or when you're trying not to feel your feelings. Does that sound familiar? Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you don't want to feel something? I'll give you an example from my own personal life. When I was transitioning from psychotherapy to coaching, it took me a while to actually make that transition because I'd been a psychotherapist for 14 years, and so it's all I knew. But coaching is something completely different. And so one of the feelings that I didn't want to feel was I didn't want to feel like an idiot. And so it took me several years to actually muster the courage to be able to make that transition. And one of the things that helped me make that transition was knowing about these layers, right? So it's not like you're never going to be afraid. You will. But when you know these layers, you know how to work through everything. You know how to calm down your stress response. You know how to, and as you calm down your stress response, you calm down your inner critic. So in this layer of I don't want to feel this, my invitation is to investigate. Be curious about the feelings that you don't want to feel. This layer, as I mentioned above, is triggered by your fight, flight, freeze, and your inner critic. All right? So how do you know when you don't want to feel something? Well, your mind is going to tell you something like, what's the point of feeling this? Nothing's going to change anyway. Or, if I feel this, it's going to overwhelm me, it's going to be too painful, I'm not going to be productive. When you hear yourself saying things like that, that is your cue that you're in this layer of, I don't want to feel this. When we refuse to feel our feelings, the energy gets blocked in our systems. You get stuck, you feel stuck. So your feelings are usually signals that your body is trying to communicate to you, telling you what it is that you really need. All right, so this is layer number 3. Layer number 4 is the actual painful feelings that maybe you're trying not to feel. These are the real problems that need addressing. And the invitation here is to lean into those feelings. Doing so, I know it sounds counterintuitive, feel my feelings, but when you lean into your feelings, you get greater clarity. So for instance, back to my story of transitioning from coaching, from psychotherapy into coaching. When I allowed myself to sit in the feeling of, I'm not good enough, I don't want to be an idiot, what I discovered was, maybe with enough prep, I can figure this thing out. When I sit in my feelings, or when I sat in my feelings, I had this clarity that, you know what, I'm pretty smart. I can figure things out. I figured out how to be a psychotherapist, so I can figure out this coaching thing. So we normally fear our feelings because we are either afraid that the emotion is going to overwhelm us. Sometimes we judge our feelings as being inappropriate, or our feelings are going to make us weak. So for instance, some of us don't want to feel fear, anger, rage, frustration, disappointment, resentment, sadness, or regret. Because if we allow ourselves to lean into our feelings, we're going to appear weak, or we're going to be overwhelmed. So as I mentioned above, all our feelings have messages. They are the product of our internal wisdom, intent on guiding us, motivating us to satisfy a need, a want, and a desire. So think of our feelings as a thermostat, constantly informing us to our level of satisfaction or discomfort. The discomfort we feel is probably telling us that we have a need that hasn't been met and we need to take action on it. So the more we repress or shove down or ignore our feelings, the more discomfort we feel. And sometimes it's even more painful. And the reason why it's painful is because there's a need that hasn't been met. There's a part of us that we don't have a relationship with. So again, my invitation here is to have the courage to what I call sit, shiver, or be with your feelings, especially the painful ones. Our emotions, they need to be voiced. They need to be heard by you so that you can honor them for what they are, for the need that is underneath them. And no matter what, allow yourself to give yourself what it is that you need around that particular emotion. So sometimes it's love and understanding and care and a hug. Other times it's action. Now, when an emotion is criticized or argued with or pushed down or shoved away, it remains. So you want to be able to understand your emotions intimately because they're calling your attention to what it is that you really want or don't want. Now, if you try to get rid of them or not feel them, you lose out on that important uprising message that each emotion brings. Even those dark, negative, painful emotions, they have a message underneath all of them. So until you voice the emotion and hear the message for yourself, you can't have compassion and you can't care for yourself around the pain that you feel. And until the pain is heard and loved, it holds on. It hides because it's waiting for its healing. Only after you voiced, heard, and honored the need beneath your emotions can you then ask, what do I want instead? The courage it takes to hear, voice, and honor our emotions is made immensely easier and faster through the process of tapping. So layer number 5 is self-compassion. Self-compassion is the outpouring of sadness or even anger and the uncried tears that is true healing and transformation. The true accounting of hurt and all aspects of loss, time, money, confidence. This brings a shift into self-compassion and the truth that we are worthy and deserving of good things when we are able to sit with our feelings, feel the sadness, the anger, the uncried tears. In that moment, you can then say, of course I deserve. And that motivates you to go for what it is that you want. But until you can really sit with your own feelings and see it for what it is, you're not going to have compassion for yourself because you don't see your own pain. Now, layer number 6 is empowerment. This is the sacred space where you begin to shift into deeper clarity, perspective, and really feel into what it is that you really want. And when you do that, it reignites your empowerment energies of desire, passion, enthusiasm, and courage. And these energies, they rise up through your system, giving you deeper certainty and motivation to take action. So hopefully this has been helpful to know the layers that you have to move through to do your inner work, to process your emotions. So again, the layers are your fight, flight, freeze, stress response. That's layer number 1. So learn to calm down your body. Layer number 2 is your inner critic. As you calm down your body, the inner critic quiets down a little bit too. Layer number 3 is, I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel this feeling. So the first 3 layers are very interconnected. When you're stressed, your inner critic ramps up, which keeps you up in your mind instead of coming down into your body to feel your emotions. Layer number 4 is the actual painful feelings, sitting with those feelings and hearing the messages that your emotions are trying to communicate. And as you sit with your feelings, you connect to the loss, to the sadness, or even to the anger of what's going on. Connecting to your pain allows you to feel self-compassion. And then layer number 6 is the empowerment layer. Once you've moved through all of these layers, your emotions, they rise up and out of your system. So emotions are supposed to rise up and out of your system, empowering you, giving you the passion, the enthusiasm, the courage to handle or face or take action on what it is that you need to take action on. So I hope this has been helpful. This has been Helen, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.